Well, the first thing I want to say is how nice it's been hanging out in Charlottesville. It's just been great. I want to thank everybody from IMCC for all of their help in making all these events happen. And particularly thank Susan, who lined up all these wonderful things and introduced me. And yeah, it's kind of interesting listening to the introduction. Who's she talking about? I'm just really some old guy from, a small town in Mississippi that played with computers for money. And how did I wind up here? This meditation stuff is it's really powerful. I remember saying back when I was first working with it, probably a decade in, I've learned a lot from this. This is life-changing stuff. And then I would say, and I learned like 95% of it while I was on retreat. The stuff that you get day to day is really important, but you've got an opportunity to go on a weekend retreat and really get some intensity. Take this stuff to the next level. Take advantage of it. Okay, so you miss a couple of football games. It's all right. You're not playing. They'll do it all right without you. Okay? There are things in this life that really do have long-term benefits. And training your mind seems to be one of those things. In fact, I can't think of anything that rivals it other than maybe keeping your body in good shape. Get some exercise, eat. All right, so there's 3 things to do. Get some exercise, eat, and train your mind. And this is what the meditation practice is about. So when Susan and I were emailing about, what should I talk about on Tuesday night? She suggested mindfulness, concentration, and insight. Okay, there are Pali words for these. Mindfulness is sati, concentration is samadhi, and insight is vipassana. So sati, the translation of mindfulness is actually quite good. But if I were to ask you, what does mindfulness mean? Well, by the time everybody gave all their different definitions, it'd be time to go home, I bet. Because there's a lot of various ideas out there about what mindfulness means. I think probably, however, the most useful idea would be, what did mindfulness mean to the Buddha? He was the guy that invented mindfulness meditation, using mindfulness for spiritual growth, using mindfulness for making a better life for yourself. Well, the Pali word sati originally meant memory. And so mindfulness practice would be memory practice. Remembering. So what is it you're supposed to remember? Well, I was in college at Rhodes in Memphis, and my roommate comes in and he hands me this big, thick blue book, square, kind of a funny shape, weird thing on the cover. He said, "Read this." And the title of the book was Be Here Now. Right? Ram Dass nailed it. This is what we're supposed to remember. Remember to be here now. If you're walking along with a friend and your friend says, "Mind your step," they're telling you, pay attention to your walking. There's uneven pavement, or there's dog poop, or whatever, right? And they're telling you to get really present with what's going on here. Mind your step. Be mindful of where you're stepping. All right? And this is what mindfulness is about. Be mindful of what you're doing. Be fully present with what you're doing. It really amazes me how much we all, myself included, how much time we spend in the past or the future. We're remembering great things that happened in the past. We're remembering terrible things that happened in the past. Or we're planning for the future to make sure that no terrible things will happen or some really great thing is going to happen. that's all in our minds. I mean, the past doesn't exist, right? It's just your memory. And we know how good your memory is, right? And it's just getting better all the time, right? So if your memory isn't getting better all the time, does that mean your past is getting worse all the time? I don't think so. And then the future. Well, that's your fantasy. I mean, how many times have you spent an intense period planning something and then it turned out just like you planned it? I don't think that happens very often. Okay, now I'm not saying it's not important to plan, but my favorite joke is, you know how to make God laugh? Tell him your plans, right? It's just probably not going to turn out like that. Planning is a good thing as long as you're not attached to it unfolding like that, right? It gives you some strategies, but you're going to have to figure it out as you go along. But we do spend a lot of time in the past and the future. But mindfulness is about being aware of the present. Now, sometimes it's actually very important to be aware that you're remembering the past. You're in the present remembering the past. Or you're in the present planning for the future. It's not that you shouldn't do these things, but you should at least be aware that's what you're doing and you're not getting lost. But it's also about paying really careful attention to what's going on. And we live in a culture that is completely stupid about that. If you walk down the street, you find a lot of people talking to their hands, right? Or playing with their hands. This is not mindfulness. It is not possible to do two things at once and be mindful. Modern science has shown that those people who are really good at multitasking actually are not very good at doing two tasks at the same time. They would be better off doing one task and then doing the other task. So mindfulness actually is the opposite of what the culture is telling us. The culture is telling us, yeah, you're driving in your car and you're texting at the same time while you got the radio on, and then you've got the phone in the hand, so when you have the accident, you can call 911 right away. Does this make any sense at all? So mindfulness is really dropping into the present and being fully aware of what's going on in the present. You don't have to make a big deal about it. It's just be here now. That's all that's going on. Recognize what's happening. Now, in the suttas, mindfulness is often paired with what's called clear comprehension or clear awareness. The Pali word is sampanjana. And basically, that's knowing the context of what's going on. As Ayakema said, a bank robber could be very mindful. In fact, if they're going to be successful, they have to be very mindful. But they don't have clear comprehension because what they're doing, well, they're breaking the second precept. They're causing harm. Right? So mindfulness needs to be paired with recognizing the context in which you're operating. Is the context helpful or is the context causing harm? Right? So both of these together are, basic operating instructions for a human life. Pay attention to what's really happening here and now, and pay attention to the context of here and now. Is the here and now going to be beneficial, or is the here and now going to cause harm? Now, I will admit there are situations where, there's going to be some benefit and there's going to be some harm. You have to figure this out on your own as to what you have to do here. There are no perfect guidelines. Now, mindfulness is necessary in order not only to practice the spiritual path and keep the precepts, in other words, to have ethical behavior, do the sila part of the path, but mindfulness is necessary for all of the other aspects of the path as well. The second thing I agreed to talk about was samadhi. Now, there's another word, samatha, which is often translated as calm, and sometimes calm abiding. I like to think of samatha as a big picture thing, getting your mind into a calm state, right? And samadhi is a particular type of calm, a really focused calm. And then on the weekend I talked about the jhanas, which are a particular type of samadhi. Okay, so on this spectrum of calm, we have calm when you're just, sitting there, listening to music, talking with your friend and feeling really relaxed. Okay, and then we have the one-pointed calm, which you're aiming for in your meditation to get really calm, one-pointed samadhi. And then if you want to deepen that and take it to what the Buddha described as right concentration, then that's entering into these altered states of consciousness that really enhance your concentration. When you're meditating, any degree of calm that you can generate is going to be beneficial. We live in a culture that most people, I don't think, can even spell the word calm. It's highly frenetic, and everything about it is do more, be more, get more. So when you're meditating, you're actually taking yourself out of the frenetic culture you're in, and you have a chance to calm down. That's part of what the relax is about. The more you can relax with the meditation, the calmer it gets. Of course, you can overdo anything. The Buddha talked about the necessity of having concentration and energy in balance. So if you get too calm, you don't have any energy there, well, you just go to sleep. This is not useful. Better to sleep in a bed than sitting up with your neck getting a crick in it, right? But if you've got some energy and you can have that alert calmness, this is what we're striving for in the meditation. And sometimes that's about all I can get in daily life. There's not a lot of concentration there, not a lot of samadhi. There's just some, okay, this is better than what I was doing before. Now I can just sort of unwind and be present. But when things are going well, I'd like to build it up towards, concentration. Concentration is the usual translation of the Pali word samadhi, but I think a more accurate translation is indestractability. I'm not even sure that's a legal English word, but it's what we're after. The ability to put our minds into a state where we're less likely to become distracted. If you're following your breathing and you're able to stay with the breath and you're not getting lost, you're not becoming distracted, right? And this is what samadhi is, this ability when it sort of drops in and whatever your object of meditation is, such as the breath, is fully known. You know each in-breath, you know each out-breath. And now you're beginning to build samadhi, this indistractability. Now, it's probably not perfect. If there's a loud sound nearby, you might jump and wonder what that is, okay? But if there's not something that's externally going to disturb you, then you can get to the place where the mind is just really resting in the breathing. This goes by the name of access concentration. It's called that because it can give you access to these deeper states known as the jhanas. In your daily practice, it's definitely possible to reach access concentration. But not if you're sloppy with your daily practice. I mean, if you meditate for 20 minutes, 5 days a week, not going to happen. If you meditate for 45 minutes, 5 days a week, it might happen sometime. If you meditate for an hour every day, now you've got a much better chance. I know sometimes I sit down and I only get distracted once. I sit down, I put my attention on my breathing. 2 seconds later, I'm distracted. And then the bell rings 45 minutes later. It was like, oh, I was supposed to follow my breath. There was this one really long distraction there. This is what happens sometimes. But other times I sit down and, there's distractions, and then it sort of fades out, and then I'm actually able to stay with the breathing. And I'm beginning to get some real concentration build up, some access concentration. The frequency with which I can get to this access concentration, the state of not being so distracted, is proportional to how good my daily practice is. So if I can get an hour in every day, it's much more likely to happen than if it's sloppy 45 minutes here and 20 minutes there. And not on the weekends because there's football games or something. All right? So a daily practice is a really, really essential part of the spiritual path. Now, in order to generate this concentration, what do? We practice mindfulness of breathing, right? You're mindful, you're fully present here and now with the touch of the breath coming in and the touch of the breath going out, or the rise of the belly in this moment and the fall of the belly in the next moment. So we're using our mindfulness here to steer our minds towards calm and then hopefully eventually towards very nice concentration. Now, if your daily meditation seems like it's quite distracted, this does not necessarily mean that it is without value. It seems that we build up a lot of garbage along the way. And those distractions seem to be related to taking the garbage out. It's not that you should be distracted because you'll get the garbage out. It's that if you haven't taken the garbage out, you'll get distracted, and that will help take the garbage out. I remember at one point after I started teaching, I had not been on a residential retreat in a year, and my daily practice was kind of sloppy. And so I went on a retreat, and I was shocked and embarrassed at how bad my concentration was. I mean, I'm supposed to be teaching concentration, and every sitting was nothing but total distraction. You know, a number of those where there was only one distraction the whole length of the sitting. And it was like, oh yeah, my daily practice hasn't really been deserving of the word daily. I hadn't taken the garbage out, and there was this huge pile in my mind, and it was there, and it was just pulling me all over the place. It was a 10-day retreat, and it took about 8 days for that pile of garbage to get taken out. And then it went fine, except the retreat was over right away. So even if your daily sitting practice doesn't seem like, I'm not really getting to samadhi, I'm not even getting a lot of concentration, I'm getting a lot of distraction, it's still valuable. You will be at least taking out the garbage. And then when you go on this weekend retreat towards the end of next month, it'll go much better. You'll settle in faster, and you might learn something that changes your life in a very positive direction. Now, I mentioned the jhanas. There are 8 altered states of consciousness that are described in the suttas that go by the name of jhana. And by using a very concentrated mind, the mind at access concentration, the one that's not getting lost, the one that's knowing each in-breath and out-breath, maybe some wispy thoughts in the background, it's possible to enter into these states. When I said that you should smile while you meditate, that act of smiling takes you in the direction of these jhanas. The first jhana is a state of, it's usually translated as rapture and happiness, glee and joy. There's a physical release of hopefully pleasant energy accompanied by an emotional release of, joyful, happy energy. This first state is pretty excited. Not exactly what you would call calm. There's calm along the way, and then you trigger this state, and here comes all this energy and so forth. But it's possible then to move on to the second jhana, simply by taking a nice deep breath, calming down the physical energy in the process, and now focusing on the emotional state of happiness. And now your object of meditation is the fact that you're happy for no external circumstance, only because you have a well-concentrated mind. And then it's possible to calm that happiness all the way down to contentment, an even calmer space, a space that now is physically very still. All that excited physical energy from the first jhana and the residue left over from the second is out of there. And then you're in this very contented, wishless state. A positive state still. It's possible to let go of that positive aspect and drop into a place of quiet stillness, the fourth jhana. The description of the fourth jhana says it's a state beyond pleasure and pain, so it's equanimous, emotionally neutral, that contains mindfulness fully purified by equanimity. All right? So here's a way to enhance your mindfulness. By stepping through these altered states of consciousness, you've basically shut down your egoing. Everyone is aware that we have to think ourselves up, emote ourselves up. There's no little guy sitting behind your eyeballs looking out, pulling the levers. All right? You're just making up the fact that it feels like that. If you stop doing that, then you get to a less egocentric place. And then you've got a chance for deeper insights. The purpose of these jhanic states is to move you into a mind that is concentrated, clear, sharp, bright, malleable, wieldy, and given to imperturbability that you can direct and incline to knowing and seeing. In other words, to investigating reality. And this is what insight is about. With a concentrated mind, after you stop doing the techniques of making it concentrated, then the trick is to shift it to investigating reality. And most of the techniques that you're familiar with in meditation can be used to investigate reality. You can return to examining the breathing. You can do a body scan. If you've ever done a body scan before, and then you learn the jhanas, and you do a body scan with a jhanically concentrated mind, yeah, it's different. People are always amazed at how different it is. You see much more subtle stuff, and it really is kind of insightful how things are changing, and yeah, there's no me in there. It's just the field of sensations. You can investigate the four elements, the solid nature of reality, the liquid nature of reality, the gaseous nature of reality, and the energetic nature of reality. The Buddha talked about this sort of investigation. Now, he didn't use solid, liquid, gases, and energy. He used earth, water, air, and fire. But it's basically the same thing. Look at the world in a different way. Look at the world in terms of your reactions to your sensory input. When we get any sensory input, we immediately categorize it as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is a good survival strategy. If it's pleasant, it might be useful to keep it. If it's unpleasant, it might be useful to get rid of it. If it's neutral, probably okay to ignore it. All right? And so that's what we do. We run our lives running after the pleasant, running away from the unpleasant. Turns out not to be the best strategy to have a happy life. And so the Buddha suggested that we pay attention to the pleasant, unpleasant, neutral aspects of our life, how we're responding to our sensory input, and just really see what's going on. Don't get caught up in craving for the pleasant or craving for the absence of the unpleasant. The Buddha pointed out that all of the dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness of life, is something that we're generating in our minds, and it arises only when there's craving for things to be other than they are. And so if you can experience pleasant and just enjoy it without getting caught in the craving, when it goes away, it's no big deal. And if you can experience the unpleasant and just do what's necessary in order to take care of the situation, as opposed to getting bummed out that you're experiencing the unpleasant, then your life goes much smoother. The Buddha also said it was very important to look at the changing nature of reality. He emphasizes this again and again and again. He says it's better to live a single day watching how things arise and pass away than to live a century not seeing this. And so with a very deeply concentrated mind, if you just pay attention to reality in terms of the arising and passing of phenomena, this is another way to gain access to the insights into what's really happening. So, mindfulness, remembering to be here and now. Using that as a way of being in the world, being more careful, knowing about the context of what you're doing, a way to keep the precepts, to act ethically. Having that as a foundation, using the mindfulness to generate a calm mind, following your breath, for example, doing metta meditation, doing a body scan. Moving that calm all the way up to concentration, to indestractability, taking that even into these altered states of consciousness, and then using whatever degree of concentration you got, whether it's access concentration or just the calm of having settled down and quit being frenetic 21st century, to then investigate reality. Particularly look at it in terms of the ever-changing nature of reality, the fact that nothing provides lasting satisfaction, and the fact that everything depends on other things. These are the three characteristics: anicca, dukkha, anatta. This is what the Buddha said to investigate. My teacher Ayakema said that insight was the understood experience. If you investigate reality, then you will have experiences of anicca, dukkha, anatta. And hopefully you get some understanding of what's going on, and it changes your life and makes it a whole lot better. At least this is the strategy that the Buddha outlined. So we got about 10 minutes if there are any questions. Okay, so I only gave you the 4 jhanas. There are actually 8. Though in the suttas, there are the 4 jhanas and the 4 immaterial states. It would appear from the suttas that the 4 jhanas I described are sufficient. If you can get that concentrated, then the odds of you gaining insight into the nature of reality with that sort of concentrated mind have gone way up. But there are additional 4 states. There's the realm of infinite space, the realm of infinite consciousness, the realm of no thingness, and the realm of neither perception nor non-perception. Now, the word realm gives us a sense that it's someplace. And it's true that it was interpreted at times that way, that when you entered the realm of infinite space, you actually went to a place where there was infinite space. I would say you're having an experience that you interpret as experiencing infinite space. To get there, you want a really concentrated mind, like 4th jhana. That's why 5 comes after it, all right? And then to get there, the trick is to focus on outward expansion. And if you can stay focused on outward expansion far enough, then this vast empty space appears before you. And that's the 5th jhana. The 6th of infinite consciousness is changing your attention from the space to your consciousness of the space, becoming aware of your awareness. Your consciousness must be as big as whatever it's aware of, and so you find an infinite consciousness. The 7th jhana, you look at the content of that infinite consciousness, and after a while, there's no sense of space there. There's just nothing. I mean, you become focused on nothing. Yeah, it all sounds really weird. But it is possible to put your mind into these states with enough training that this is what you're experiencing. And then the last jhana, neither perception or non-perception, would be a state that has no characteristics by which you can describe it, but you know that your mind is in a state that has no characteristics by which you can describe it. Get good at the seventh jhana. We'll talk then, okay? So there are additional states.
Do they weave in and out so that, or is it you're in one space or another? Or
You want to learn to be in one state and then move deliberately to another. But as you're learning, maybe you're in one and you lose it and fall into another. Okay, fall back or even forward.
so it is like
It's like going down 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a real sense of going down, climbing down. And then you switch to another dimension, you've got 5, 6, 7, and 8 in a different dimension. But all the while, your concentration is getting stronger. Your indestractability is getting stronger. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been to these levels. Why did you come back? Because you can't stay there, right? I get to one of these levels, and I can stay for some period of time, but then I'm sitting in a chair, and it's beginning to get uncomfortable, and my body starts complaining, and I lose it. Or I'm sitting there, and it's going really well, and my body's not getting uncomfortable, and then my bladder says, no, you've had enough. Or my stomach starts rumbling, and it gets really hungry. So the limitations of the body are going to pull me out of that. There's no way to stay there. And so I have to come out. So just going there and staying doesn't do you any good, because you have to come back. Going there, and then once you've got that concentrated mind, letting go of it on purpose and investigating reality. That's where the juice is. That's where the real breakthrough in understanding can come from. I liken it to sharpening a knife, right? And so you're sharpening the knife when you're in these spaces. But if you just sharpen, eventually it disappears. There's no knife left. The idea is sharpen, and then you go cut. And what are you cutting? The bonds of ignorance, right? So you get yourself concentrated, you come out, and you use your sharp mind to investigate reality. So staying there, yeah, it's cool, but it's even better to come out and see what's actually happening. Because when you see what's actually happening, it changes your life. I mean, look, I'm just a guy that liked to play with computers, and they gave me money for it. You know, I grew up in the small town in Mississippi. I did this stuff a bunch. I got some idea of what's going on with reality, and now all of you guys are inviting me to come here and hanging out with me and, you know, taking me to see Monticello and taking me hiking in the woods around here. You know, I'm just a hippie computer programmer, but this is what it's done to my life. So yeah, getting a real deep understanding of what goes on can really change things in a very positive direction. I made all these new friends these last few days.
Is it possible to fall into one of these states spontaneously without,
Yeah. So is it possible to fall into one of these states spontaneously without working your way into it? You're going to need to get some degree of concentration. You're not just going to sit down in front of the TV and fall into one of these states, right? But you could be meditating and it going well, and you get into a good concentrated state and fall into one of these states. I would say when I teach, say, a 10-day retreat on these, a lot of people come in having fallen into one of these states. They were on, a residential retreat at Spirit Rock or IMS or Southern Dharma, and the meditation was going well, and suddenly they found themselves overwhelmed with joy. Where did that come from? Okay, they stumbled into one of these states. Or they were on the 3-month course at IMS and they fell into the void. Well, they fell into the 7th jhana, the realm of nothingness. Yeah, so these states weren't invented, they were discovered. The human mind has a tendency to go into these states. And so if you get quiet and you get near to something like this state, it seems like it's a downhill slope and you're into one of these states. They're a sort of stable configuration of neurons firing in your brain. And you get close to that configuration and yeah, you'll slide right into it. I stumbled into the first one on my second retreat. They couldn't really tell me what was going on. It took another 2 years to find somebody that had a clue. And that was my teacher, Ayya Khema. So, yeah.
Sounds like you're talking about an altered state of consciousness.
Right.
For some people, it seems to me this to be a very tricky, uncomfortable experience. If they were with someone to ground them.
Yeah. Yeah, for some people this could be freaky, uncomfortable. I require for people to come on my retreats where I'm teaching this that they have done 2 1-week or longer retreats. Okay? If they've done that, I figure the odds are fairly good. They've got some sense of grounding at being on a retreat. Not guaranteed. You know, sometimes people still get into trouble. On the retreat, I'm trying to see everybody 3 times in 10 days. To see what's going on, track what's happening. If they seem like they need grounding, try and help them get some more grounding. Most people don't find it a problem, you know, but
The way you explain it sounds
yeah,
reasonable, but if someone doesn't
yeah, yeah. Well, it was recommended by the Buddha, and the guy was usually giving out pretty good advice. But yeah, it's possible that it would not be indicated for some people. But the number of people it's not indicated for is quite small. So I'm willing to say to a bunch of strangers, come here and I'll show you some altered states of consciousness and we'll see what happens. Because the vast majority either don't experience these states or they experience them and it's a very positive thing. Not everybody who goes on a retreat experiences these states. But everybody who goes on a retreat where there's concentration being taught does get concentrated. You know, it just sort of bleeds over into everyone. So, Mickey's big hand is pointing straight up. I'll stick around if people will have further questions. I just want to close with 1 minute of metta meditation. So get in touch with the fact that you'd like to be happy. I mean, wouldn't you like to be happy? Wouldn't that be a good thing? Be nice. It'd be nice if I was happy. Now think of the people you care about. It'd be nice if they were happy too, yeah? May they be happy. Think of your acquaintances, neighbors, co-workers, people you see in stores and restaurants you frequent. Yeah, it'd be great if they were happy too. May they be happy. Think of the people you find difficult. If they were happy, I mean genuinely happy for good reasons, not because of doing evil things, but doing good karma things, they wouldn't be so difficult. So yeah, may the difficult people be genuinely happy. In fact, this whole world would probably be a lot nicer place if everybody were happy. Not so much fighting. Not so much anger, pain, sorrow. May everybody be happy. May all beings everywhere be happy. Thank you for this opportunity to share the Dharma. May any merit from this evening be for the benefit and liberation of all beings everywhere.